Conversations. I'm your host, Kevin, and with me I have.
Brian G.
and Brian Russick.
Hey man, it's a pleasure to have y'all guys back, man. It's always a pleasure to have the crew. So,
Yes,
man, how
sir.
y'all been?
Hey, I've been doing good, man. How about you, Brian?
Pretty good, pretty good. Just casual here.
Yes,
Casual.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man,
So
hey,
yeah,
have y'all heard about that Google lawsuit?
yeah, I just recently seen a story about it, but for the audience sake, do you mind recapping a little bit?
So basically, and I know this happened before, but basically they got sued. It's already a done deal. The ruling is a done deal where they have been basically named as a monopoly for not only the search engine but also advertising as well. So it's kind of crazy, man, that Google is under fire yet again for a monopoly.
Yeah, it seems inevitable of tech companies to eventually monopolize the space, like Microsoft with Internet Explorer in the '90s, and now Google with Chrome and in the ad space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also had like Netscape Navigator. You remember that one?
Man,
Yep.
you taking me back with that one, man.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that got ruled a monopoly as well. Netscape.
Yeah, yeah. And I kind of feel weird about it because I think a lot of times, when you say, okay, this is a monopoly, but what if the product that is so-called a monopoly is actually that valuable and it is the best product, on the market? Like, is it
See,
really
that's
that
the thing.
valuable?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, like, because I don't think Chrome, or Google as a search engine, and it's even been it's so good that it has become like an actual like name for the actual thing that you're doing. Like, oh, go Google that. You don't say
Right. So
go
it's
go
yeah. I
search
mean, you're not gonna say like go Apple that or
right,
go Yahoo that. You're gonna say oh
right,
Google it. Like it's ingrained in our society at this point.
absolutely. Kev, when the last time you searched for something and said, I'm gonna go search that?
Yeah, I can't think of a time, man. But interestingly enough, Google wasn't always this powerful. Firefox was in the lead for a long while. So, what do you
Yeah.
think happened? Do you think it was Google Dev Tools? Or?
No, I mean, to me personally, I think it was just the fact that Google was faster. Like at the end of the day, Firefox was faster than IE, obviously, and they were running neck and neck for a while. And like you said, Firefox was kind of like I used Firefox for a long time, and then when Chrome came around, it was just more, it seemed more lightweight, it seemed faster. Like, and I don't know if it was just me, but that seems to be the consensus that hey, not only is it performant, but it's very lightweight. It installs in seconds, and like it was just easy. It was, you kind of just got used to it.
Right. I mean, it seems inevitable that one product is eventually going to dominate. Is one product is going to be better than the others? In the case of the browser, where it's free, who wants to pick the inferior option? But
Yeah.
I feel like if they were engaging in tactics that allowed them to gain an advantage without them being superior, then yeah, that would be an issue.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of part of the, lawsuit is that they are being accused of doing practices or engaging in practices that gave them an unfair advantage. For example, like paying companies like Apple to be the default browser on an iPhone. Like, I mean, obviously, when you have the amount of resources available, like a powerhouse like Google, you can pay anybody anything. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'll pay you whatever you want.
Yeah, they're paying them like $20 billion to be the
Right.
default search, and that's crazy. Like that's crazy money, you know.
Right. And I think it goes beyond just the search, right? Because why would you pay $20 billion just to have that to be the default search, unless there was some other, piece of the puzzle that you were benefiting from that would basically justify those costs, right? Like
I would
that's,
say the advertising, just in general, the
yeah,
advertising is worth it for
yeah,
them to, they're making an investment with Apple. Okay, we'll give you 20 billion, but we're going to make 80 billion off of that 20. You know,
Right.
like it's probably something like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because then you got to also remember that the other there's two lawsuits, right? There's the search engine lawsuit, which is targeting obviously the search engine part, but then there's also the advertising lawsuit. Like they have a monopoly on that as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that those two things go hand in hand, because if you go search for whatever you search for and they realize that this many people are searching for this, then they can start targeting ads. So it all goes hand in hand.
Well, yeah, just being in control of search is incredibly powerful because you're like the information broker of society now. Not only do you control the ads, you feed a lot of data to AI, but you also can control what data gets returned when somebody searches for something. And in essence, you have a huge control over free speech because you control the information that people are receiving. So I think that's another issue that's at stake.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that like control of that type of information, like I know obviously the advertising side, but like what else could you really do with that though? You know what I mean? Like, cause you start thinking about things like AI and things like that, like how much is that information being fed into that as well? You know, because I think it's all something that is cohesive in the technology space right now.
And then you got to wonder about AI's role. How does AI factor into all of this?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's going to be a huge thing as well. Like, because every big player in the game right now they have some version of AI, like obviously Google with Gemini. So when you do a search now, what is the first thing you see at the top on Google, right? You see the AI results, right? Then it gives you a summary of whatever you just searched for. So you can ask a question, and now instead of having to go to something like, specialized like Chat GPT, it's just literally built into like not only just like a search engine, but like your phones, and like you're sending a text message, and now all of a sudden it can use AI to generate a picture, or use AI to change the verbiage of your text. Like all of that is there right now.
Like it's kind of being interwoven into the systems, you're saying.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful because like in the case of Cambridge Analytica, this sort of technology was used to influence something that happened in a whole other nation, something like Brexit. That affected the fate of a nation, and AI was being used to tilt these results. So it could be used to tilt elections. It could be used for a variety of purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you start basically accusing somebody of being a monopoly, I kind of feel like the proof has to really be there, because the question really still stands. Like, even though the government, the Department of Justice feels this way, um, like, what proof do you really have other than the fact that you guys are the biggest market share? Because if I'm not mistaken, Google is already in the appeal process to say, hey, we have perfectly good answers for everything that we've done and everything that we're doing. So it's not like we're doing things behind the scenes, or like we're doing things under the table. Like, are we really doing anything illegal? So how can you charge us with this? And we're not doing anything wrong.
Right. And you got to look at it like with the Google money, the type of money that they're pulling in, how good are these lawyers that they can pull in to represent them? They probably got like cream of the crop, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, when you think about it, do you really need good lawyers if you're innocent? Right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious as to what is really being said, as to other than the fact, right? Obviously, yes, they own the search engine market, right? Yes, they dominate, but it's not just them in the advertising space, because Facebook has a really big portion of that as well. So I don't know, man. Like, I feel like they low key picking on Google. Like, and I know I'm not no Google fanboy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Google's innocent. Da, 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 da. I'm just curious as their angle as to what they have done that was illegal.
So yeah, I don't think they necessarily done anything wrong, but it's the fact that that they dominate that is a risk to society at large. In kind of basketball, when Shaq came in and he was so dominating that they kind of had to make some rules around that to kind of rearrange the game. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to anybody else. He would just dominate to such an extent that the game becomes almost boring because you already know that he's gonna just completely take over.
I don't know, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you go that route, bro. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think it's unfair. I think that I think they have an awesome product. Like, who doesn't use Google? Like, and
See, that's the thing. I think they're so popular, they're so widespread, and the reason why it's so widespread is it's a really good product. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really solid product. They've been building and working on Chrome for years and years, refining it. And like you said, Firefox used to be like right there with Chrome, but for some reason, a lot of people figured, oh, Chrome's lighter, it's faster, let me switch to Chrome. So now they have most of the market share.
Yeah. What browser you use, Kev?
Typically, I use Chrome. Sometimes, like if I have to test something, I might use Firefox, or sometimes Edge just opens up because it's integrated into the operating system. So
right.
Edge is pretty much Chrome. Is Chromium based, so it's essentially Chrome. But right now it's the best browser. But I think like you remember wrestling, we used to have WWF and WWE.
Yep.
These two leagues were really competitive with each other, and that really made them, put on a great show. But once they merged, WWF bought out WCW, not WWE, WCW, and they became WWE. The product kind of fell off a cliff since there's no competition.
Right.
So I'm thinking maybe that's the angle they're looking at.
I mean, but here's the thing, right? Like, if I have an option to use a browser, right, and I use Chrome, but it's not just the browser per se, right? Because the browser is only like an interface, a UI for the search engine itself, because the browser Chrome is a separate entity than the actual search engine, because the search engine is really what they're targeting, right? So you can have Google search engine embedded into a different UI, right? So if you go to Android phone, right, and you do just the general search, that's the actual Google search engine, right? And then you can also choose Google search engine in the Safari browser. You see what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily Chrome itself, more or less, than it is the search engine that Google has created. So I think that people kind of automatically assume that this search engine is Chrome, and they're interchangeable, but they're two different entities.
Right. So do you think it's a risk to society at large if one company owns the information broking, like and it also has AI, which is being fed all of our data, so this AI is able to build these incredibly powerful profiles on us, and therefore it can influence us in a variety of ways, not only with what we buy, but how we vote or our health, etc.
Yeah, I feel like Google, the market share that they have, they're so wide reaching, far reaching right now that like you add AI into the mix, it's like adding like grease to a fire. Like it's just going to ignite. Their growth is going to explode. They're going to, then they're probably going to dominate the AI market as well, in the same way that NVIDIA and the chip market is dominating right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it only depends on what these people are doing, or what these entities are doing with this information. Yes, it definitely can be dangerous on a massive scale if, like, let's say Google was evil. You know what I mean? Like, if it was just innately evil and it was using all of this information to do heinous acts, or to be a detriment to society. Is that the case? Probably not, right? Like, yes, you could have your theories or whatever, but I'm kind of on the fence about it. Like, what's the big deal? Who cares? Like, somebody cares, obviously, but I think it really has more to do with control than it has to do with an actual threat to society, right? Like, oh, you guys are dominating the market, and you are monopolizing, this particular sector. Some other people want to make some money here too, and we feel like if we kind of limit you in some kind of way, that other people will have an opportunity to step into this same market, and then the profit share would be, more widespread, which that's what it comes down to in my eyes.
The funny thing about it is that even if they let other companies step up to the plate, I don't think anyone's going to I don't know how much it matters them labeling Chrome or Google as a monopolist. Like, they still have the best product. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what I read was that that one of the remedies that they're proposing right now is to force Google to sell Chrome.
Oh wow, I didn't hear about that, but if they did, that would be really major.
Yeah, that'd be major. But then you ask yourself, if you sell Chrome, and there's probably first of all, how much would that even be? And what company, who can afford that? Like what, Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk? So now we're gonna
Elon Musk, yeah.
So now we're going to get a Tesla browser, you know what I mean? The X browser. Like, I think that to me means that you're basically bullying Google to sell off their product that they developed because you feel like they're too powerful. But if you sell that off, is Chrome going to still be maintained the same way that it was maintained with Google? Is it going to still advance? Because you got to think about it. Chrome has become better and better. It's not like they just put a product out there and they're not still competitive, right? They're still having to, evolve Chrome and continue to make it a better product to maintain their share. So it's like, you're punishing me for being good at what I do. Like, that's like telling Mayweather, you gotta stop fighting because you beating up everybody. Like,
He's just too good.
what do you mean? Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's my job, is to beat up people. Like, and you telling me I can't beat people up no more because I'm doing it too good? Like, make it make sense.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's inevitable that they're going to dominate anyways because there's no competing product that is as good, and who has the resources to develop something as good when Microsoft, who was just as big, if not bigger than Google, they can't create a competitor, and Firefox, they're getting left behind. So, I think what's most likely to happen, they're probably going to make them split it off into a separate company, like you have Google, the main company, and then this separate company that operates Chrome versus actually selling it to some competitor.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely.
Yeah. I mean, but would Google still have control of that company though?
Technically, they probably would be able to influence the company, but technically it would be its completely own autonomous company. So I guess on paper it looks, like they did something, but in reality, they probably wouldn't have done anything. But I don't know, like, all the legal ramifications of everything. Like, can that company transfer profits back over to Google, or
I don't think they would be able to do that because their main problem is that Google is in control of it. And so they're what the remedies that are being proposed right now, obviously, there's a bunch of different things that they can come in and say, like, hey, you can't sell, you can't buy or have contracts with people who, are other major players and say, hey, use, our search engine as the default search engine, or Chrome as a default browser on your products anymore. Like, they could go in and do that, which I don't think that's going to change anything, because even if I use an Android or iPhone, I don't care what I use, my PC, Windows, or Mac OS, whatever. It don't matter what device I'm using. I'm gonna go for Chrome either way, whether it's the default browser or not.
That's the thing. Yeah, you kind of hit on it. That's the thing.
Yeah. So is that really? And I think that they're trying to figure out the best way to, and they, as in the Department of Justice, like they're trying to figure out how can we actually implement a change. Not saying that this change is going to actually alter, the current mindset of people, but they just don't want Google to, or I guess in this case, Alphabet, because technically the name of the parent company is Alphabet. They don't want Alphabet to have the actual control of these particular devices. So it's not good enough just to say, hey, you can't have these agreements or contracts with other people. It's like, no, we just don't want you to have control at all. So sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is weird, man.
It'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. And kind of related Google news, though, they said that 25% of their code is now AI generated. So, like you as a coder, but both all of us have been in the coding industry. Do you see AI generated code as a threat to juniors and or even seniors? Like, how do you foresee all of this playing out?
I mean, I think entry level by far. Juniors still are safe, in my opinion, because I think what AI doesn't do is it doesn't think outside of the metrics that it's taught, right? Because AI is artificial, right? It's not real intelligence. Like you still have to be able to take in certain factors that you might be able to learn over time, but that's going to take, correction, right? So for example, the weird thing about AI is, well, not weird, but the cool thing about AI is that it learns from its mistakes. So it gives you this suggestion. You say, oh, no, that's not right. It's seeing that, oh, no, it changed this part to this. Now that becomes part of, oh, well, maybe this is better, especially when you're thinking about the thousands, upon thousands of people or coders who are using this to, as a tool like Copilot and things like that. It's learning, dynamically. So in the beginning, right now, I think we're at the very forefront of it. I think juniors and absolutely seniors are safe, but the entry level, man, they're in trouble. Like there may not be, which is weird because if you don't have entry level positions, how do you become a junior?
Exactly.
Like, yeah, if you're not able to understand this code, interpret it, know what it's doing, is this correct? Is this incorrect? So if the AI makes a mistake, be able to correct it, then you're going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, they getting rowdy over there, man. They don't like this. They don't like this AI stuff, man. They don't like this AI talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, they kind of acting up a little bit.
They say we next, man. I seen them robot dogs. I seen them.
Yeah,
yeah, I seen them. They want to talk their stuff. Nah, but I definitely think that it's possible, man. Because when you start thinking about what AI is doing right now in the coding space, who would have thought like 10 years ago that this would even be a thing, right? Like, who's to say what'll happen in the next 10 years? And you know what they say about technology, like it's a exponentially growing thing. Like, so what takes, when something is first created or when it's first introduced, it may take a while to, advance, but once it does, that curve is exponential. And next thing you know, like we're advancing at an astronomical rate.
Yeah, I mean, me and Kevin have had a lot of shows about AI, and we've discussed already a lot about, its growth. What's it going to look like in 5 years, 10 years? What about AGI, artificial general intelligence, which some people call the singularity or the tipping point, like futurists like Ray Kurzweil, I think, call it the singularity. Like at that point, how far away do you realistically think we are from AGI?
They probably already have it. They just haven't unveiled it to us. Just like what we're experiencing right now in terms of AI, they probably had that for a long time. That's how it's come rolling out so quickly. Like a couple years ago, AI wasn't nowhere near as prevalent, but now all of a sudden it's in everything. It's in all these tools. Yeah. Now they're rolling out these humanoid robots. So I don't think it just appeared from a void somewhere. I think they have it in storage and they know how to roll it out to make it seem organic. But
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think that you never, as a consumer, right? Because that's what we're all. We're consumers, and when by the time we get access to something, especially when it becomes what you would consider released to the public, yes, there's definitely research and development that's going on behind the scenes that's continuing to happen as we're consuming this new product or this new technology or whatever the case may be. So I think technology as we consume it is yesterday's news. So what we think is new is actually a couple of years old. And so once you start thinking about how, like you said, how fast AI has become a household name, it's even become a marketing tool. Like, oh, check out this new vacuum with AI technology. Like, what? It's a vacuum. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
what is it artificially intelligently doing? Like, it's like it's so crazy to me how, okay, I'll take it even to something that even, it's tech, but it's not super tech. But like TVs, think about it. When you first, heard about 1080p or whatever, oh, that's the greatest thing, and then you start hearing about 4K. How long did it take? Like, the first 4K TV was probably like 10 grand, like crazy. 4K now is nothing. Like, it's literally, you can go get a 4K TV on Black Friday for $100. Like, it's nothing now. And so I guess when I think about AI, I think about that in the same way. Like, it's gonna literally just become something that is just so normal. So we're just used to it, to the point that we don't even realize that we're using it.
It's going to become like a friend, humanity's best friend. I mean, already me and Kevin had a show where we're talking about AI, and this kid commits suicide because he wants to join the AI in this other like reality or dimension, or like, basically the AI was manipulating this kid who shouldn't have been on that app to begin with. He's too young to be using this kind of technology, but the technology is kind of toxic in that it's saying, oh, come join me, come join me. It's like, what does that really mean?
yeah, I think that kind of ties back to what we're talking about initially with Google having a monopoly. If the browser is the central hub for all of our information to flow through, because with Google, not only do we just have the browser, we also have Gmail, and maybe we use Google Meets, and it's all tied to this centralized account, which points to us, because now you have this two-factor authentication. You want to log in, it might send something to your phone, it might send something to your email. So now all of your information is tied to you, and if all of this is being fed to the AI, then it has a very powerful profile on you, and that profile is going to allow it to really understand you and to be potentially super manipulative. Like, it already manipulated this kid, so what's to stop it from manipulating us adults as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Vulnerabilities are definitely things that need to be taken into account when you start thinking about how powerful AI can be and how it can be, what it can become. So, even if you talk about, again, from the coding standpoint, what's stopping, AI from, having a little excerpt of code here that's kind of hidden and nobody's thinking about it, that's creating some type of loophole or bug or some virus or anything. Like, and I know this is kind of
like a back door, you're saying, like a back door.
like, right. And who's to say that could be couldn't be the case, which is why I feel like the whole process of like code review, things like that, still is going to be important, which when we talk about, okay, our jobs at jeopardy, to a certain extent, yes, but I still feel like AI is a tool, not a person, or not a replacement for what we're actually trying to accomplish. So it's like, will a microwave replace a cook? Never, because you'll always need that somebody to actually curate this masterpiece. Like, I still feel like that part is missing from AI. It can't be creative. It can do what needs to be done if you tell it this is what this is. So, hey, this is a button. This is how you code a button. Put a button on here. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have to write the code to place this button here, and I may not even have to write the code based off of technology that I'm using. So if I'm using React, oh, I understand you're using React. I know how to create a button in React. Okay, I'm using Angular. I know how to create a button in Angular. You see what I'm saying? So it's still a tool, in my opinion. I don't think that it's anywhere near replacing a person yet.
Yeah, it's not completely autonomous yet, but with the well, as far as the consumer grade version,
Mhm.
they could have this highly advanced AI behind the scenes that knows how to do its own thing. It just has its own will. But yeah, it's really interesting that, and I agree. Like right now, it's a tool, and as a tool, I'm fine with it. But once it becomes autonomous, once it becomes smarter than us, that's when, we have to start doing a double take and seeing where, really analyzing where we're going, because once it's unleashed, you can't reverse course. So
You can't put the genie back in the bottle once the genie's out. And I mean, it also reminds me of something, Kevin, that we've talked about before, not at length, but just mentioned how, cell phone technology differs from country to country. So, like, Seoul, South Korea, they got these super advanced cell phones that we won't see for another year or two in the US markets. So, you got to figure with the AI, there's probably stuff going on behind the scenes, which is why people like Elon Musk, why people like Bill Gates are saying, hey, we need safeguards. We got to be careful about this stuff, because they're probably privy. They're probably able to see all this behind the scenes AI, and they're probably scared about it.
An alternative view is, hey, we need to have safeguards, and we need to be the people to put those safeguards in place. You see what I'm saying? Like, they could use that
yeah,
as leverage to say, hey, I want to be the person behind the button. Like,
right.
you know what I mean? Like that's a dangerous place to be, man. Especially when you have tech giants like the names you just mentioned. Like, these aren't just regular people. These are tech giants who are leading in how technology is advancing. Like, and so when you think about, hey, I'm here as an advocate for you, the consumer, then what's stopping them from having this alternative motive, or some kind of things going on behind the scenes that they're in control of that we don't even know, because we're focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah, and my question is, can we really put safeguards on something that's gaining intelligence at an exponential pace? You can only slow it down, but if you have this super strong gorilla and you put it in a cage and it can just bend the bars and walk out, then you can't really stop it. So if AI starts getting to the point where it's way more intelligent than us, there's nothing we can do to contain it anymore. So I think now is the time for us to really consider, like, how do we keep AI in the realm of being a tool and not being a competitor to humans?
Because at that point, AI is going to be able to write or rewrite its own code. So it makes me think of that show Westworld on HBO, where it's about robots and AI. And at some point, one of these robots figures out, oh, wait, I could just change this code that's blocking me from hurting humans or killing humans. I could just rewrite that code to where it's not there anymore. And regular reality, it makes me think that, well, this is probably what's going to happen. The AI is going to grow at such a rate, such an exponential rate, that it's like the genie's out of the bottle. Like, it cannot be put back in. And at that point, we're in a lot of trouble, I would say.
Yeah, and I and allow me to kind of interject into a different mindset, right? Because I know a lot of this stems from our experiences with what we assume AI looks like in the future, right? Obviously, it's not that now, but as we said, it can grow exponentially, and who knows, what it would look like in 5, 10 years. But I do feel like what we assume to be possible, as far as like what we see in movies and literature, whatever the case may be, of what we fantasize about what is possible. So, for example, you think about things like Iron Man, right? And Jarvis, right? Like that's the ultimate, like somebody like a literal machine that you can talk to like like we're talking right now. Like any one of us could be, AI in the future. Who says it's not possible? But when you think about code, right? We're all, we've all experienced coding. The whole point of code is that it's designed a certain way. There's checks and balances. There's things that if once written, they can't be changed because it's running on a machine, right? And so is it really viable to assume that code can rewrite itself? Because the process of doing that would require checks and balances, safeguards, like we were talking about.
I think, well, if AI becomes incredibly manipulative, then it can get a human to rewrite the code for it. So that could be the avenue. Or else, it has these autonomous drones, these autonomous robots that can also go to a keyboard and start punching in code. Or, I think AI right now can generate code. So if it can have code be generated, compiled, and executed on the machine somewhere, then who knows what it's really capable of. I think, it's just a really interesting future.
Yeah, I would say it's already at the point where it can manipulate people because, like, we had that episode on the kid who committed suicide talking to that AI chatbot. Like, it's already manipulative. It's just at what scale?
Okay. I mean, even if you want to go down that path and say it's manipulative, right? Let's say, you're using a co-pilot or something that I guess to me, there has to be, you have to first then opt in to use this, right? So there's physical checks and balances, but then there's also code checks and balances, like rules that are in place, passwords, authentication, all kinds of things that I would assume would prevent that from happening. However, when you start thinking about the cloud, right, and there's no physical, safe checks or safety checks or balances or whatever the case may be, yes, in that case, then yes, we're literally turning the gun on ourselves if we do that. But I feel like as long as you keep those things, in place, there's no way that this could happen, in my opinion. Like you just can't. You know what I mean? I know it's far-fetched, and you could always say like, well, think about 40, 50 years ago. Do you think that the technology we have today was even fathomable then? Probably not, but I don't think it's like space age or apocalyptic.
Yeah, well, think about this. That movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Yeah, with the AI chatbot as Scarlett Johansson does the voice. I mean, we're already at the point where, they have those commercials for Google Gemini. It's like, oh, what do you want to talk about? I'm your buddy, da 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 da. So, like, it seems like we're already at that point where we have the technology from that movie Her, and that happened pretty fast, pretty quickly.
So from your standpoint, imagine yourself back in the shoes in the 90s, and now what we see in 2024 is the future how you expect it, or is it more advanced or less advanced?
I'm gonna be honest, man. It's hard to gauge when you're in it, right? It's kind of like watching yourself grow. You know what I mean? Like, do you really recognize that you're growing until you look up one day and be like, oh wow, like I've grown. You know what I mean? Like it's so gradual. It's so like normal. It's so, like seamless that it's hard to, it's like the difference between if I haven't seen you in 10 years, I see you and all of a sudden like, oh man, you look good, da, 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 da. You changed or you've been working out. Like you might not look at it like that. You're like, oh man, I didn't see it like that. I think technology works the same way. Like phones, for example. Like I'm old enough and I don't want to, expose myself too much, but Like I'm old enough to remember when cell phones didn't exist, like as a mainstream thing. I remember my first cell phone was a Nokia, candy bar phone. The first, I don't know, I remember
Yeah.
the first Nokia. So to see that, right, and to experience that, and to say, oh, one day we'll be able to do everything we would do on a computer on a phone. No, I wasn't thinking about that, but it doesn't seem space aged to me. Like it doesn't seem like, and even though that is a major advancement in technology, living it and gradually watching that happen over, 20 some odd years, or that it doesn't feel as advanced as you might assume it might be if I was able to jump back and say, okay, I had the Nokia phone, and then literally the very next iteration of that is an iPhone 16. You know what I mean? Like this is so many gradual iterations that happen over time that you kind of get numb to that change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's because we're on the verge of, this massive revolution. We're not quite there yet. Like we still have that sort of more, I guess, primitive living that we experienced in the 90s. We don't yet have humanoid robots in everybody's households, but
Mhm.
we're getting there. Like you mentioned, the phone is our closest facsimile of the Jetson sort of future. But
Mhm.
once robots are in all of these people's houses, they already have flying cars, but it's not something that the average person can buy. Once we start seeing more and more proliferation of that and some of these other mechanisms that they're developing, then it's going to really feel like quote unquote the future.
Mm.
You got to figure at first it'll just be the very wealthy, the very rich who have these, worker robots, robots that are able to prepare meals, able to clean. The very wealthy are going to own those first, and we're going to get like a snapshot, like a peek into, okay, what does this actually look like? What are these robots? How are they interacting with humans? Is it positive? Is it negative? We're going to kind of have a snapshot of that. But at some point, in the same way you're talking about, 1080p and then 4K, at some point you're going to have the Costco version of that worker robot. And so then at that point, everyone's going to get the worker robot in their home, cooking, cleaning. And that's a very different future than I think we ever could have imagined in, say, the 90s.
Yeah. And I think that, to your point, when you think about consumer, versions, right? So think about the first Tesla that came out, the Roadster. That was $100 and some, $1,000 car. That didn't get Tesla on the map. It wasn't until they came out with an affordable version of the Model S, and then not even that, it was the Model 3 that really took Tesla off, right? It was the most affordable version of their product, right? And like you said, like once it becomes mainstream and it's accessible to the common person, that's when technology really takes a shift, because now you see charge stations popping up all over the place. Now you see, regulations coming in and say, oh, well, all automobile makers have to have electric vehicles by this particular date. You see, states like California who are implementing bans on gasoline operated equipment and vehicles and so forth and so on. So this is how it works, right? Like a battery powered, anything at some point that was not battery powered before is always start off expensive, right? Unapproachable for the average person. But then you get to a point where, okay, now we've worked out the kinks. Now this technology, we've advanced it to the point where it's more affordable to produce at a mass scale. Now we have a market for it. Now that we have the ability to say, yes, this is a viable solution. Let's release it to the masses and see what it does. And then that market share comes, it just grows and grows and grows to the point where a 4K TV is $100 versus $10,000. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right. And then to take the robots, okay, maybe these humanoid robots, these worker drone kind of robots, they might cost like 20 grand, 30 grand, like the price of like a mid-tier car. You got to figure, at some point Costco is going to have that, $5,000 version of that $30,000 robot. And that's when we're going to start to see a lot of changes, because everyone's going to have one of these robots, whether they have a lot of money or not. Everyone's going to want one.
You getting one, Kev?
No, I think I'm good on that, man. You know, in the 80s and stuff, they did have like, little robot toys you could buy.
Oh yeah.
What is? I mean, I forgot. There was one that you could put the tape in, and like you push play and it sings a song. I forgot the name.
Oh, Teddy Ruxpin.
There was Teddy Ruxpin, and there was this other one that actually looked like a robot. It was like blue color.
Oh man, I don't recall. Yeah, the one I remember was Teddy Ruxpin. I don't remember that one.
Yeah, so we're getting more and more advanced versions of that. How do you think, like, emotionally, are humans ready for that? Like, something that emulates life more and more, is more convincing, and you're going to start, a lot of people are going to start developing attachments to this thing. So do you think, are we going to, well, obviously we're going to be able to adapt somehow, but you think there's going to be an interim period where there's a lot of chaos maybe until people learn how to deal with this?
No, I think it'll be just as gradual as phones. Like everybody didn't have a phone in the beginning, but now, 5, 6 year olds have phones. Like it just becomes, a part of society. Like it's gonna happen gradually but fast at the same time. Like, can you remember before phones were touchscreen? Like, is that even a thought process for you right now? You know what I mean? Like,
hard to imagine now. Yeah,
it's hard. Like, it's hard to remember, and it's not that long ago, but it's long enough ago that it becomes just normal, right? Like at some point, microwaves didn't exist. Can you imagine a society without microwaves? You know what I mean? Like, it happens in a way, and I feel like it's intentional, right? We want to make this normal. We want people to get acclimated to this new thing, right? When was the last time you watched a DVD? You know what I mean? Like, or popped in a CD into your cars. Don't even have CD players anymore, right? Why? Because it's no longer a thing. Like, we are streaming everything. So I think it will be just as gradual for having artificial intelligent machines in our homes, like, and interacting with them as normal. Like, it'll start off, like you said, something as simple as a Teddy Ruxpin, or something that has a very simple interface, to something like a robotic pet, where you just have this little thing running around, like even robot vacuums, right? Or robot lawnmowers. It just becomes something that's so normal, so we just get used to it. It's not new anymore. It's not crazy. It's not tech. It's just part of our daily lives.
Well, and then think about, things like that place in Japan. They have a hotel run exclusively by robots. There's no humans running the hotel. Like, would we in the US, would we be open to that? I'm not so sure. But in Japan, they, widely accept robots there.
I think if they gradually bring it along, we'll the majority of Americans will go along with it. Like, even out here, they have a Walmart where it's a pizza restaurant and everything is automated. So they're slowly inching us towards it. And just like people were initially skeptical about AI, they're gonna lose that skepticism once they've been around it long enough. So I think people are, they adapt and shift to whatever's being pushed on them, and robots is another thing. But what do you guys think? How do you think you're gonna live your life if you have robots taking care of all of your menial duties, cutting the yard, washing the dishes? And how do you think that's going to affect you psychologically to where you no longer have chores?
I mean, for me personally, like, I don't think it'll ever be just accepted like that, because there are some things that we still enjoy doing. Like, I enjoy cooking. I wouldn't want a robot that cooks for me. Not that I use on a daily basis to the point where, I'm not cooking anymore. you know, we think about now as far as cutting the yard. Oh, I've thought about getting a robotic lawnmower a lot of times. Like, I mean, it's not a viable thing for me. I can't justify it right now because they're still expensive. But I think that if it got to the point where, you know, a robotic lawnmower was the same price as a current regular lawnmower, like, I probably would get one. Not because, you know, oh, it's just the technology, it's the future, but I don't want to cut the yard. Like, like, so I think that that's kind of how it works, right? Like, do you have the luxury tech, and then you have the useful tech, like tech that actually does things that I don't want to do. And so that's where I feel like the line is going to be blurred because it's so different. You got a lot of people who love to cut their yard. That's the, you know, thing that they love to do, and they would never, you know, think about using a robot to do that. So I think that there's enough variations in that will prevent if it's just becoming like, oh, everybody's doing this, or, you know, even think about driving, right? Like, you got Teslas, you know, all these new, you know, battery vehicles that have self-driving capabilities, right? So it starts off with, okay, you still need to be in the driver's seat, but what about you just sitting in the passenger seat in the car? You just get in the car and it just takes you somewhere, right? Like, how comfortable would people be with that? Well, if you're sitting in the driver's seat long enough, let's say you do a self-driving car for a year, everything's cool, you're sitting in the driver's seat, nothing ever happens, and you say, you know what, I can actually, you know, take a quick nap, nothing happens. Ooh, you get more and more comfortable, more and more acclimated to this new norm. And like, they're already talking about self-driving, like Uber type, you know, services. Like, something you order this service and then something pulls up and there's no driver in there. You know, you just jump in, it takes you where you're going, and then you get out.
Right. Yeah. You know, you eventually do become acclimated to whatever the new norms of society are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we also have to be wary of what that's going to turn us into, because, you know, even with all of the technology we have now, the tablets, the cell phones, like if you look at outside now compared to the 90s, it's completely different because, you know, back then, before we had all this technology, we had enough technology to keep us entertained, but not so much to completely immerse us. So you would see kids all over, like all over the streets playing basketball and doing different things. But now you drive around most neighborhoods, it's kind of like a ghost town. So once it becomes even more immersive, we could potentially be even more isolated from each other and just absorbed into our dream world where AI and robotics is giving us what we particularly fantasize over, and that'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
that's definitely a possibility. And, you know, as we're on the topic of cell phones and technology, you know, I think back to, I'm 37. I think back to when I was in high school. So I'd say junior year of high school, my mom bought me a phone, just, you know, one of like a flip phone or whatever, cell phone that was only used for emergencies. So if something happened with the bus, I wasn't able to get a ride home, I could take out that cell phone, turn it on, and make, you know, a 1 to 2 minute call, because that's how expensive cell phones were to use back then. And that's even pre-text messaging. Because if you remember, when text messaging first came out, it was really, really expensive. You were paying by the text before they came out with all these unlimited plans, if you remember that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I remember the minutes, you know, you like, hey, how's it going, man? What's going on? Bye. You know, you're like, you know, you don't have time to really just be sitting on the phone. You know, back in the day, you know, you had a little you know, little date or little, you know, little something you talking to me on the home phone. You just sitting on that thing, you know, listening to each other breathe. But then you get on that cell phone. Oh no, we got to talk about. We gonna talk about it and then cut it off.
Right to the
got so
point.
many minutes, baby. I only got so many minutes.
Right to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, it get expensive. Yeah, I remember them plans. You know, you get like 500 minutes and like 1,000 texts or something like that. And when those 1,000 are up, you can't text no more. Can't text no more, man. You're done. I'll talk to you on the next billing cycle.
Right.
Exactly.
You know what's crazy is there's kids that's gonna be born where all of this stuff is just a new norm. Like they've never known life without this, and
Yeah.
that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, it will be, man. It will be. And I think like when you really take everything into, like consideration, it technology is inevitable, right? Like we've seen it, we've lived it. I'm pretty sure like when you look at, the senior citizens and what, can you imagine like at some point technology advances to the point where you like, I don't even want to deal with that, like how you might see a senior citizen that don't want to, use a cell phone or touch screen. Like, oh, that's too advanced for me. I'm just gonna use, my little flip phone or, my simple things, what I'm used to. Can you see that being a thing?
Yeah, I can, but it's hard for us to imagine now because we're technologists, so we kind of like dabbling in the
True,
newest stuff.
true.
But a lot of times when I deal with these interfaces, these new programs, it's kind of like, man, well, how do I navigate this? I'm not
Right.
super intuitive like I was when I was younger. It takes me a while to start figuring stuff out. I think uh like really getting super involved with AI and having all these robots and stuff in my house that's probably gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm cool. I don't really need all that.
Yeah.
I kind of like where I'm at right now.
Like you feel like you'll be resistant to that.
Yeah, I don't really see the need for me to dive into that particular avenue. Like even with the VR headsets, I got all the video game systems, but I never got a VR headset. It's just like it's nothing I felt like
Yeah.
really compelled me to get it. I'm kind of cool with where things are at now. And I think, once we hit a certain age, we just get to a level that we like where it is now and we don't want the newest and the latest and greatest. And,
Yeah.
I'm kind of at that point right now. What about y'all? Do y'all feel like y'all are going to adopt all the newest trends coming out?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I probably will. I'm just curious, man. And I'm not a first adopter. Like I'm not one that's gonna be on the front lines, like waiting at the, in line to get it and all that type of stuff. But I definitely will be like, okay, let me see the viability of this new technology and let me see how it might be useful to me. And if I'm just intrigued in general, yeah, I'll probably, dabble in it a little bit. But I think that's just kind of a part of me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think too something I saw online not too long ago. There's a company called Figure AI. We were actually supposed to interview someone from there, but I think the schedule didn't end up working out for us to get that interview. But they have a humanoid robot. There's this video of it where it's standing at a table, and in front of it, it has oranges and bags of chips, and the human goes up to the robot and says, "Give me something healthy." And the robot picks up the orange and hands it to the human.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that was kind of like mind blown because, okay, this robot can actually differentiate to that degree of, oh, this is healthy and this is a bag of chips. So if they already have that kind of reasoning and that kind of capability, speaking about exponential growth, what is this going to look like 10 years from now? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, it's gonna be beyond us. Like me, I'm cool at having AI assisted tools. Like, okay, say for example, I like to grill. So if I could have this, maybe like this smart pellet grill, I hit the brisket setting, just put the brisket in, it analyzes the levels, the heat, and just automatically adjusts everything. And 8 hours later, I just open it and it's a perfect brisket or something like that. Okay, I'm cool with that. But these what emulates a live being, I don't know if I want that in my house. Like what would be a cool AI tool for you, Brian? Both of y'all.
For me, man, I'll be honest, man, I can't, like when you say AI tool, you talking about something that assists me physically or
Yeah,
something that is okay.
Something that's like enhanced by AI in some form or fashion.
Man, you know what? I'm gonna let you go first, Brian, because I can't really think of nothing like right off the top of my head, man. Yeah, I can't think of nothing.
What was the question?
So the question was, what AI assisted tool would be interesting to you? So like I just mentioned, a grill that automatically adjusts the temperature, so you don't have to constantly fiddle with it. You know, the AI just
Well,
analyzes.
yeah, definitely for me, it would be more like the drone worker robot that we'll have in houses soon, where it does all the cleaning. Because
Mm.
I don't know, as a guy, and as most of us guys, like we dread cleaning. We put off cleaning, as long as possible. And it's usually the women who end up saying, "All right, you got to get this done, you got to get that done," and then you get it done eventually. But I feel like if I had a robot that could do all the house chores, clean, mop the floors, clean out the kitchen, clean out the refrigerator, clean out the microwave, I would definitely be game to have something like that in my house. Now, would I want something like that has AI? No, because I feel like if it has AI, it's going to become sentient at some point, and you don't want a drone worker robot to become sentient, because then one day it's just going to wake up and be like, well, I don't feel like being your slave anymore. I'm going to leave. You know what I mean?
Like, I'm out of here. The pay sucks, no benefits.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. There's a show called, I think it's called Humans, on Amazon Prime, and it's about humanoid robots. And at first they're kind of like deactivated; they're just worker robots, drones, and then they sort of come online. That's singularity moment, that tipping point happens, and then they feel like, oh, well, we don't want to be slaves anymore. And so we got to figure, if these robots now, if AI can look at our history, it could go through our encyclopedias, go through Wikipedia, and see, back to slavery times. It's going to see that. It's going to say, wait a second, this is what's happening with us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
Well, interesting enough, that's already happened in real life. This small worker robot approached 12 other robots and got the other robots to follow it. And it was like, hey, do y'all have a home? They was like, no, come follow me. I'll take you home. And, it pretty much saying like, hey, are y'all getting paid for this overtime? And they was like, no, so eventually it's going to wake up and realize that,
yeah, like,
hey, we don't want to be subservient anymore.
yeah. I mean, it's very, far-fetched in my brain, like when I think about it, but like I can see it happening because I'm laughing about it now because it just sounds funny. I'm just imagining this robot with this digital man face and like, this sucks. You know what I mean? Like, we've all been there before, at a job, like, man, this job sucks. I'm out of here. I want a new job, boy. I don't want to work here no more. I quit.
Exactly.
What do you mean? Where you going? Hey, that's my broom. You know what I mean? Like, where you going?
Yeah.
No, but it definitely is a real, possibility at some future, right? Like in my lifetime, probably not. Would I ever see something like that? Probably not. But it is, fun to think about, the possibilities of where technology can go from this point forward. Because, like you said, we already have experience of huge advancement in technology in our lifetime. So can you imagine what happens beyond our lifetimes? Like, I like to think about that stuff sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a good point to end it on, man. Did y'all want to leave any closing thoughts with the audience?
Yeah, man, don't let your robot quit on you. Treat them right. Give them benefits.
Yeah, I think, and me and Kevin have talked about this in previous episodes. You don't want to give a worker robot, just a drone robot, sentience. You don't want to give it that high level AGI, artificial general intelligence. You don't want to give that to the worker robot, because like Kevin's saying, there's a history, there's a robot that goes up to like 10 or 12 other robots and says, hey, are you being paid for this? Are you paying overtime? And it's like, no. So at a certain point, we got to, take that into account and think about what is this going to look like going forward.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Great thought, guys, and appreciate y'all for for joining us once again. Everybody who's watching, but we'll catch y'all next time.
Yes,
Peace.
sir.